Mabbutt has gone forward with Stewart to the right, Lineker and Howes to the left. Is Gascoigne going to have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, I say! Brilliant! That is schoolboy's own stuff. Oh, I bet even he can't believe it. Is there anything left from this man to surprise us? That was one of the finest free kicks that this stadium has ever seen.
Hello and welcome to episode 71 of Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Right, Geoff, what a week. But before all that, your trivia question.
When a striker scores a hat-trick, it's notable. And when he scores a hat-trick of only headers, it's even more notable. But there are some players who've scored 4 headed goals in one match. But there is one player who scored 5. So who is the player who scored 5 headed goals in one match?
Something to get your head round. We'll have the answer at the end of the show. Before that, let's have a look at what's been going on this last week. The first game on Saturday was your mob, West Ham, on a bit of a run away at Man City. I think we both thought that would be a routine 3-0 for Man City, but actually came close.
Yeah, I mean, there was an argument that West Ham were good enough for a draw. I don't think they were. I think had City wanted to, had West Ham made the mistake of getting a second and drawing, then City would have gone ahead to win. But it was a good match. West Ham played well, and you have to be honest and say losing 2-1 to City at the moment, the way they're playing, is actually not a bad result. And luckily for the Hammers, nobody around them won either.
No, the teams nearest you are sort of also not showing willingness to compete for that top 4 spot. So I think probably you'd have frightened a few of them with getting a goal at City, which is something that very few people are doing, and coming close.
Yeah, I think something you said earlier on, the thing which marks this West Ham team out as being different is that after the match they were disappointed to have lost 2-1. You can imagine in the last few years West Ham would go, oh yeah, if we only lose 2-1 at City, then that'll be great. The players actually believe that they're good enough to compete with or maybe beat everybody, except City, of course.
Most people are going to be beaten 2 or 3-0 there. City do keep clean sheets, so I think it was quite frightening for the other teams around you who are, as you say, not really competing for that top 4. The other most controversial game, I think, of the weekend was immediately after that, which was West Brom 1, Brighton 0. Another sort of unexpected result, I think, really. I don't think anybody expected West Brom to win. I mean, I thought that would be a draw. But there was controversy with terrible refereeing. I think that's the only way we can say it.
I think terrible refereeing does it more justice than it deserves. It was absolutely shocking. I think Lineker described it as the worst refereeing performance he'd ever seen, and you'd have to say it probably was. I mean, how the referee, who knows he did not hold his whistle up to say wait, can then disallow the goal. Brighton were the team that were penalised. They were the innocent team here. You should be allowed to take free kick whenever you want it, and the rules say that you can, unless the referee holds up the whistle and says you wait for me because something else has happened that he needs to sort out. There was nothing happening that he needed to sort out, just West Brom weren't ready. Well, so what? Who cares?
Well, Brighton captain Lewis Dunk, he came out and spoke to the media and said, I said to the referee, can I take it? He blew his whistle and I took it. And then they went and looked at VAR. Then there was a second whistle before the ball crossed the line and all this sort of thing. And Lewis Dunk said, why doesn't he come out and speak to the press and explain himself like I have to? And we've spoken about that before, but I think referees should explain their decisions. And secondly, this morning we saw an article saying Chris Sutton thinks referees should be mic'd up so we can hear what they're saying.
Well, Chris Sutton is 100% right. Referees in rugby union are mic'd up. That doesn't do any damage to anybody. In fact, it helps. It helps the crowd understand why he's made the decision he's made. His conversations with the rugby version of VAR are open on the air. You can hear what they're both saying, and it helps everybody. So you have to ask the question, why does Riley, who runs the limited company, the profit-making company that runs the referees, why does he not want it to happen? If you have nothing to hide, then everything should be out in the open.
Well, the thing is, Lee Mason, that is the referee involved, blew the whistle. Dunk took the free kick, and then as the ball went into the net, he blew the whistle again because he saw that the West Brom keeper, Sam Johnson, wasn't in position. Well, as you say, so what? If he'd blown the whistle in the first place, that means you can take the free kick. But I mean, as you say, Gary Lineker said he'd been in football for 40 years, never seen anything like it. So then he went and looked at VAR. And then he went over to the pitchside monitor to review a potential offside, even though he's already blown the second whistle. So, I mean, it was a calamity all around, and I think, yeah, he's right, Dunk. The referee needs to explain himself, because that was, yet again, a shocking display.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what this is all showing is really how bad the refereeing is, and it is terrible. It's the worst I've ever seen. You know, until we get openness, until we can see why referees are selected for particular matches in advance, why referees make the decisions they do, until they're mic'd up so you can hear it, you can hear the correspondence with the VAR people, it's going to carry on getting worse.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much controversy lately with red cards being rescinded and terrible displays and VAR not getting the decisions right and all that kind of thing. We're going to come to the Tottenham match, but actually the referee was completely anonymous in that game. Hardly had anything to do, even though it was quite an exciting game. So they can do their jobs. Is it getting worse, refereeing?
I don't think there's any question it's getting worse, yeah. It has been for a number of years. And you can certainly take it back to when Riley took charge of the PGML or whatever it is they're called. It's absolutely shocking. And it is, no question, getting worse.
Jermaine Genius on Match of the Day, after Lineker had said he'd never seen anything like it, said, the bottom line is the referee's made a mistake when he's blown the whistle. He looked up and saw Johnson standing by the post and panicked. And I think that's probably the word for it, panicked. He said, but quick free kicks are part of the game. It's not a rule that every player has to be in position. And he said Dunk has been very smart. He asked the referee the question and he waited for the whistle to blow. And the referee blew the whistle. That, at that point, should be the end of it.
Absolutely, that should be the end of it. It was a goal wrongly disallowed. Yet another goal wrongly disallowed. Let's put it that way.
I remember many years ago, and it did the rounds in the early days of the internet, I think, of a referee in one of the English leagues who gave a free kick to one side. The goal went in, and the referee jumped in the air, punching the air. When he was asked to explain himself, are you supporting that team? Were you celebrating their goal? He said, no, I was celebrating my decision.
Yeah, he was a very famous referee, wasn't he? A very, very famous one. Yeah, I mean, it just shows most of them are Manchester United fans, and they're all from up north. So, yeah. So, if they're from up north, maybe they're not Manchester United fans. If they're because most Manchester United fans are in Essex, aren't they?
So, yeah, another embarrassing and poor weekend for referees, but still an interesting one for football. That West Brom 1, Brighton 0 affected both of them, really, because Brighton have been dragged down into the relegation by their own, I'm not going to say poor form, but inability to score goals, and the other teams around them, Fulham, for example, who are on a bit of a run, and West Brom getting that win, are sort of dragging them into it.
Yeah, but I do think Brighton have probably done enough already. There's enough of a gap there, I think. I think the choice is between Fulham and Newcastle United. Because Newcastle, they've just lost Almiron as well, and Saint-Maximin, as well as Callum Wilson, and when Wilson was out, I said, well, where are the goals going to come from? To lose their best two players, it's going to be very, very difficult for Newcastle to survive.
Well, they got a home 1-1 draw with Wolves at the weekend. Wolves also have a little bit of a tough time, but would that Newcastle getting a point at home to Wolves, would that have pleased them? I mean, they're on such a bad run. Getting a point against Wolves is always a good day, isn't it?
When you're down at the bottom, I've said this before and I'll repeat it. Traditional wisdom says that from Christmas onwards, if you have the same number of points or fewer points than games played, you're in a relegation struggle. The corollary of that, you flip it on its head, that argument, 1 point you can earn is always a good point. And the closer you get to the end of the season, the more valuable those single points become. So for Newcastle, that was a very, very good result. And it was a poor one for Wolves. Wolves would have gone into that thinking 3-0 to them. So for Bruce to get Newcastle to the position where they got a draw with Wolves is actually a good performance for them.
And that's down, you think, to Steve Bruce's management skills? Because the fans do not like him at all.
You know what I've always thought about Steve Bruce? I've always thought he was absolutely useless. But in the last 12 months, I think he's done a fantastic job. And is it down to him? Yes, because if you look at the quality of the players in the team, you struggle to find any at all. Shelvey, Fraser, if he decides he wants to play that day. The two brothers, if they play, but there are problems there. So yeah, I think it is down to Bruce, and if he can keep them up, then he will have done a fantastic job.
And the club are in some disarray still. Mike Ashley trying to sell the club, all sorts of strange things happening there. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, which probably does kind of unsettle the players and the management team. So they are playing against a backdrop of uncertainty. So well done to Steve Bruce, I suppose. It is a point gained. Leeds United were at home to Aston Villa. There was only one goal in it, unbelievably. It was Leeds 0, Villa 1. Normally with Leeds you get a lot more goals than that.
Neither team can put a run together, a run of wins, or even a run of losses. It's all, win one, lose one, win one, lose one for both of them. So trying to predict the result of that was a nightmare. Could have been 3-0 to either side, 3-3 draw, 5-all, anything. For it to only be 1-0 was a surprise. I think Meslier, the Leeds goalkeeper, had a good game, played very well and probably kept the score down. Leeds, when they fire in attack, are very, very good, but the way they play, because there's no safety net there, they either score or the opposition get the ball and attack them. And really, Villa is set up very well to do that. And players like McGinn, without Grealish there, are really stepping forward and showing how good they are. And I can't remember the name of him, but the guy who's playing in the position that Grealish plays is playing extremely well. I wish I could remember his name.
Yeah, I mean, Bielsa said he wanted Grealish to play because he wanted his team to have a proper test. I mean, he's an unusual character, isn't he, Bielsa? The other week he said that more important to play beautiful football than to gain points, which is an amazing sort of thing to say in something that is financial and points based. So you've got to love him. 1-0 loss at home, not great, but it seems this season we are talking about teams like Villa and Leeds more than we would have done in previous seasons because they're playing interesting and exciting football. Whereas in previous seasons it would have been Manchester United, Arsenal, the usual top six. We're talking more about the clubs in the middle than we normally would have done, I think.
Yeah, because everybody from 6th down to 16th is win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Nobody's putting a run together. Nobody's convincing. There were individually some good matches. Even the Wanderers managed an individually good match this week, and Spurs again had a really good match. The question and the thing both managers want is, okay, you did it this week, now do it next week as well. And that's what's not been happening in those places between 6th and 16th. Nobody's putting a run together.
And there we are. So that's Leeds again not getting a draw, but losing at home to Villa. Crystal Palace 0, Fulham 0. Again, you've said before, a point doesn't get you anywhere, but that's a point gain for Fulham, I think.
But in their position, yes, it's a point closer to Newcastle, and if Newcastle had lost, then that becomes a very valuable point. But it's better to have the point than not have it if you're in a relegation fight. The last team, the third from bottom team in relegation, is often decided on goal difference, and therein lies Fulham's problem. They can't score goals.
Yeah, another 0, but Palace, it's difficult to know what to say about Crystal Palace. They are one of those clubs in that bottom 15 or whatever that really there's not a lot to say about, but I do think we have to say Roy Hodgson has done a good job keeping them solid and keeping them up because they've been up for the longest stretch ever.
Yeah, and in their last 5 games they've won 3, drawn 1, which is not a bad result, really, is it?
Yeah, so you'd probably think 0-0 against Fulham, nothing to panic about. There were several big matches after that on Sunday. The early one was Leicester 1, Arsenal 3. Now, as a Tottenham fan and you as a West Ham fan, we don't really have much time for Arsenal, the Gunners, the Woolwich, the Gooners, but you've got to give them credit.
Yeah, they played well. Most of the improvement is down to Aubameyang coming back from injury and playing really, really well. Are they a one-man team? I think pretty much. When he doesn't perform, they don't perform. But he is. So, stick the points in the bank, smile, say thank you very much, and move on. So, don't know how much credit is down to the groundsman for it, but he's in position and he got 3 points, so good. Well done.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, it pains me to do it, but that's what we're here for, to talk about football. To beat Leicester 3-1 away, and Leicester have been in the top 3 for most of the season, and deservedly so, that's a result. That's a good result. Away from home, that is a good result. Should we mention it now? I suppose we should. There's an election going on at Barcelona back this month, I think, where they're going to elect a new president, and one of them, Laporta, who I think is probably the favourite to get the job, has kind of let it leak that the manager he wants to take over, because Koeman is like a stopgap, I think, there. Ronald Koeman will be out if Laporta wins. He wants Mikel Arteta. When I read that it was the Daily Mirror, so who knows, but when I read that yesterday, I fell off my chair.
Well, it's absolutely extraordinary thing if he genuinely did say that, and if he means it, it's even more extraordinary. I mean, how can you take a player who's got zero management experience and somebody he was at La Masia for 3 years, so basically as a schoolboy, or most of his career has been with Everton, a little bit with Arsenal, then going to be put out the cones for Guardiola in training. I think it would be extraordinary if they gave him the job. If the one of the other candidates whose name I've forgotten wants Xavi as manager, and there were rumours last week about the great St Brendan. After I'd finished laughing and thought about it, actually it did make quite a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was quite left field that Brendan Rodgers, I mean, he probably thinks it's about right. He knows he's a good manager. As you said on last week's show, he's not as good as he thinks he is. But when we heard that Brendan Rodgers was in the running to be Barcelona manager, we thought it was funny. But look what he's done with Leicester on that budget, and he gets the best out of new players when they come in to replace his star players who get moved on to so-called bigger clubs. So you can see why they'd look at Brendan Rodgers from his record and the way the team plays football. But Mikel Arteta to Barcelona, I mean, now Arsenal have started playing quite well under him. I'm happy for him to leave. And I think it would be hilarious to watch that at Barcelona. They would be the travelling circus with that. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, they're almost the Spanish jongleurs already, aren't they? And they're in such a terrible. We've been saying this for a year. Barcelona are in a terrible, terrible mess from top to bottom in every single department of the club. They're a mess. And there was a raid this week from the financial police, and the reason being that clubs and all football clubs in Spain are still clubs. In other words, they are owned by the members of the club, not by an individual. They have a charter which governs how they operate, and part of this charter is how much money they can borrow. Now, Barcelona are way, way, way over this amount. So you can quite imagine why the police would get involved. Even if no member had contacted the police and said, I'm a member of Barcelona and I'm worried about this, it's public knowledge that they're way, way over their charter budget, or charter allowance, shall we say, for loans. But almost every football club that is still a club has the same problem. And even if they haven't borrowed more money, they will be in breach of their charter obligations because the value of their players has fallen 20% since COVID-19. Each one of them doesn't have an amount of money they can borrow, they have a percentage of the assets of the club. And so if those assets, which are mainly players, fall 20%, the value of the ground falls, all of a sudden you're breaching your charter. Now, Barcelona are almost certainly doing that. I would guess Real Madrid are as well, but if the banks are supporting them, that's kind of okay. But I think we're going to find some much, much more serious stuff coming out of this Barcelona story. I think there's a lot more fraud happened there than we know about at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing about, the charter and, if it goes down by 20%, all that, that's one thing, but they actually made arrests when they did the raid. So it's not just like, look, times are hard, coronavirus, all that, you've gone beyond what your charter allows you to do. They actually arrested people and raided the club. So I think when you use the word fraud, I think that's what we might be looking at.
Yeah, but the point about the charter is backed by Spanish law. So if it's written, same as the memorandum or articles of association of any limited company in the UK, that is backed by the law. You cannot breach those things. Yes, it is very, very serious. Most of the directors under the previous president have been arrested as well, as has the president himself. It's going to get very, very interesting. So what is it, that old Arab saying, may you live in interesting times?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's Chinese or Arabic, but yeah, maybe may you live in interesting times. Pardon the pun, but it's going to get very messy at Barcelona over the next few weeks. Let's move on, because this is what I've been building up to since Sunday, was Tottenham 4, Burnley 0. Now, you can keep saying it was only Wolfsberger, it's only Burnley, Burnley's defence were in disarray on Sunday, but Tottenham had a front four of Son, Kane, Moura and Bale, and Bale as his best, or getting back to his best. That front four, when the team sheet came out, must have sent shivers down the spines of the Burnley defence.
Yeah, and the Burnley defence that is very well organised, very experienced, very well coached. But those four, and the movement they have, will cause problems to any defence. So, but you cannot equate Burnley with the bunch of Austrian photocopy toner salesmen that you played last week. I mean, come on, that's, I'm sure my schoolboy team could have given them a game. But to beat Burnley 4-0 is a very, very good result, because Burnley are a well organised team. They know what they're doing and they're hard to beat. But with that front four, with the movement they have, it's going to trouble better teams than Burnley.
Yes, it was a very good game. Gareth Bale was by far man of the match. He played 69, 70 minutes, which is just about the longest he's played in a match so far this season. I think he's got something like 9 goals for Tottenham this season in all competitions, 3 in the league. But somebody who's only playing, half a game every other game, that's not bad, actually. He scored 2 in the game against Burnley. One was a tap-in from a pass from a pinpoint pass from Son. And Son, Kane and Bale have started passing to each other in the way that Kane and Son were doing. Kane's goal came from a long-range pass from Gareth Bale. You won't see a more accurate pass over the top of the defence into the path of Harry Kane. It was brilliant from Bale. Then he had a very good goal himself, a second goal, Bale. But one of the things that I said to you before was that pleased me was he was running down the wing with the ball, pushed the ball past one of the Burnley midfielders, and then, who was in front of him, ran past the Burnley player to get the ball again, and then showed some speed to get past the Burnley player. I think we've got Bale back. Obviously, it's not the Bale from 7 years ago, and as Mourinho said, we don't want that Bale. This Bale that's playing now, that's what we need. And he looked great. He really did.
Yeah, and it's very good to see, because he's one of the players that everybody, irrespective of which club you support, you want to see him play, because he's great value, isn't he? Really, really good value. And by the way, don't say bad things or try and downgrade the tap-ins, because the person speaking now, me, I managed to miss from 1 foot out, and 1 foot inside the post, and managed to put it over the bar and wide from a foot. So tap-ins are actually quite difficult.
Yeah, and it was a pass from Son Heung-min, which came speeding through the box, and Bale ran onto it and put his toe to it. That's what you play forward players to do. And I think Gary Lineker was, once asked, how come 90% of your goals were inside the box and just over the line? And that was my job. I was a goal hanger. That's what I had to do. You don't see that so much now, I don't think, goal hangers, as it were. But Bale had a near-perfect performance. Many of the sort of London-based papers gave him 10 out of 10. I think that's a bit too much for a 70-minute performance. But Bale was by far man of the match. But Tottenham eased into a 4-0 victory. It is only Burnley. We've got Crystal Palace coming up. We've got Fulham coming up. And we've got Arsenal coming up.
Only Burnley. How many teams beat Burnley 4-0 this season? I don't think there's very many. The important question is, can Spurs do it again? That's the issue.
Yeah, after the game, Bale was asked, were you disappointed being substituted after 70 minutes? And he said, no, I was perfectly happy with it, because I know, this is this whole thing that Mourinho keeps going on about, I know my own body, I'm still building on my confidence and my strength and my fitness, and we've got another game coming up. And he'd done his job. He'd scored 2 and assisted 1. We were 4-0 up by the time he got substituted. I was happy to see him go off the field. We didn't need him for that last 20 minutes.
Yeah, if your team's 4-0 up, then you want your best players off the pitch resting, don't you?
Well, exactly. So hopefully he said himself, we've got 3 games coming up in very quick succession. So I was happy to be substituted. That's great. Maybe he will play in the next game. I don't know. Dele Alli came on, was okay, but that's another option instead of Mora, who was part of that top 4. But Mora had a great game, and scored a goal. So all round, yes, it was possibly only Burnley, but as you say, Burnley are one of the teams that beat Liverpool this season, and they've had a couple of good results against top 6 teams. So all round, great. So for one game, Tottenham looking much better. Their first league win for a very long time. One of the other games on Sunday, Chelsea 0, Man United 0. I don't think either team particularly looked like they were going to score. Was it a case of they didn't want to open themselves up and expose themselves by trying too hard to score, and nobody wanted to lose?
Yeah, I think both teams were set up to not lose. Neither manager wanted to take the risk necessary to win the game, to be quite honest. Now, the big talking point of the game was obviously the penalty that wasn't given. And my take on that is that Rashford handballed it first. Then it went on to Hudson-Odoi's, I think it went onto his arm, but usually those are given nowadays. I think wrongly, but the way it's interpreted now, that's a penalty. But I do think Rashford handballed it first.
Yeah, the ball sort of was bobbing between the two of them as they were just leaving the box, actually, sort of trying to get out of the box. And it did seem to bounce off Rashford's upper arm onto the lower arm of Hudson-Odoi. Whether he meant to touch it or not doesn't actually matter in these days. If the ball touches your arm, it is a penalty. But if it touched Rashford first, then, because the referee went to look at the monitor and then he said no penalty, but it touched Rashford's arm first, so that's a free kick out of the box defensive free kick for Chelsea, but he didn't give that.
No, I mean, it was another instance of the referee and VAR getting it all completely wrong. I think the thing that they should have done was give the free kick to Chelsea. It stops all the questions, but they're completely incompetent and they don't know what they're doing.
I mean, what you'd argue that if he didn't give the free kick, then he doesn't think it hit Rashford's arm, but it did hit Hudson-Odoi's arm, so therefore it's either a penalty or it's a free kick, but he gave neither, so we don't even know what it was. But it was 0-0, we do know that, and probably, having watched the match myself, that's probably a fair result, because as you said, they didn't want to take the risk of going trying to get 1-0 up and going 1-0 down, and neither side could afford to lose that. Unbeaten Tuchel so far with Chelsea.
Yeah, but the final criticism of Lampard was that he couldn't get those attacking players to really play well together. Tuchel isn't either. Sometimes they look quite good and other times they don't. So he still hasn't found the formula that really works there in attack. So there is still a question mark there, but they're not losing games and they're not conceding many goals. And that's a huge improvement from where they were before.
The other game on Sunday was Sheffield United 0, Liverpool 2. Liverpool back to winning ways, but before the game, and on the radio show that you and I do for 93.6 Global Radio here on the Costa del Sol, we do a sports show on a Saturday afternoon. We all predicted that Liverpool would win. It's got nothing to do with their slide or fall from grace or whatever it was, bad run. Everybody's beating Sheffield United, sadly, and it was expected, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a regulation win, but I think you can see Liverpool were playing better than they have been in the last couple of months. They look to be almost back to where they were before, and I think they, like Chelsea, will finish in the top four.
By the way, that second goal for Liverpool was a sort of landmark goal. It was the 7,000th goal for Liverpool in England's top division. Just to give you a little bit of trivia there. The other team that had done it are, would you believe, Everton, with 7,108. I suppose that's because those teams are ever present in the top division.
Yeah, but if the counting is done by Scousers, then it's probably 4,000.
And yesterday's game, because we are recording this on a Tuesday, in yesterday's game it was Everton 1, Southampton 0. Everton back to looking like they are pushing for, well, top 4 or top 6, do you think?
I think they're pushing for top 6. Again, they don't convince because they have one good performance and one... They don't have bad performances, but they just have this sort of performance. If they can play as well next week and the week after, then 6th is a credible target, I think.
I was reading the commentary online and comments coming in from Southampton fans, quite sort of sad really, or depressed comments. One said, the problem with my club or our club is that the Saints are a selling club and we've never had the budget from the owners to really push on. Hasenhüttl, the manager, is not to blame for any of our poor form. If we'd have been able to buy top players, he would be really pushing us. And Southampton fans seem to feel that they're being pulled down into the relegation battle, but they're way ahead.
They're way ahead. They won't be in the relegation battle at all. The problem they have is not that these people now are thinking Southampton are a selling club. Southampton have always been a selling club. Always. The problem is the £70 million that they borrowed from this company MSD, which is the finance company owned by Michael Dell of Dell Computers, who have lent money to, I think, is 5 Premier League clubs so far this season. It's becoming a scandal, and I think that will very soon become quite publicly a scandal. They're lending this money at 9.2% when any limited company can borrow money at 0.25%. They're making a fortune out of these clubs, and these clubs are borrowing this money, huge amounts of money, to pay ongoing operations. In other words, to make up the loss of crowd income. So I think we're going to see football clubs going bust, and quite a few of them.
Yeah, it's sad times, and some people are just taking advantage of that, and it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, these loans are all secured against the grounds and training grounds of the, shall we call them, clubs for the moment concerned. 70 million write-off for Dell if he's sitting on the land, which is going to make a fantastic hypermarket or shopping mall. This is where we're going. The reason we're going there is because clubs were allowed to incorporate and become limited companies. Thank you, Mrs. Thatcher.
Yes, yeah, well done, Mrs. Thatcher. A lot to answer for. Yeah, but that is a very, very sad thing, and people taking advantage of it. You know, we do live in a free market and all that, but taking advantage like that when you can get loans cheaper elsewhere is just a scandal. Let's move on and have a little look at what's coming up. Tottenham beat Burnley 4-0 at home. Burnley are at home to Arsenal on Saturday. For me, Geoff, again, I think Burnley will lose that one. Arsenal seem to be on a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I know. Most of my predictions in the last couple of weeks have been on the basis that there's a team that's lost a couple, they must come good. So I'm going to say that this will be the match. Burnley come good, and they win 2-1.
Very bold for Burnley there. Right, you're going for 2-1 to Burnley. I mean, as a Tottenham fan, I'd love to see Arsenal getting beaten, but I think they're too strong for Burnley, personally. Sheffield United against Southampton. Well, that's two teams that need to come good.
Yeah, 2-0 to Southampton.
2-0 to Southampton for that one. Yeah, I think they're probably right. And Aston Villa against Wolves. I think that's quite an even match, having looked at how Wolves and Villa have been playing lately.
Yeah, I think if Grealish plays, Villa win. If he doesn't play, it's a draw.
And then, well, this for me is an interesting one. Brighton against Leicester, one of the bottom teams against one of the top teams. But Leicester have got some real injury woes now. They've got players out having surgery, all sorts of things. They lost at home to Arsenal. Brighton will feel hard done to over the last few games. As you say, they can't score. But I think that's going to be a fascinating game. And I'd quite like Brighton to win that one.
Yeah, it's Harvey Barnes was the latest injury problem for Leicester from that last match. So they've got a few. Yeah, he's going to have surgery. So they've got a few players out. But I think again, this is Leicester are going to bounce back and they're going to win 2-0.
So that's Brighton still going to be dragged further into the relegation mire. Talking of relegation, one team that's almost definitely going down against one that we've said could get dragged into it. West Brom against Newcastle. That's a veritable 6-pointer.
Well, except that I think the 3 points don't matter to West Brom. They're down anyway. But Newcastle really have to win. They really have to win that match, I think. But will they? Yeah, I think they will.
So we're going for West Brom to lose at home and pretty much guarantee their drop to the Championship. Another team in that area is Fulham. They're away at Liverpool. Not much in it for them. 2-0 to Liverpool for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then I suppose an interesting one for football fans. Man City against Man United. Manchester derby. I still think Man City will win that, but I think it'll be closer. But I think it'll be as close as the West Ham game was. I think it'll probably 2-1 to Man City.
I'll go for a draw. Manchester United's defence is terrible, and if your defence has got Maguire and De Gea in it, then it's terrible. So 2-2.
2-2. So you don't think they're going to be as cautious as they were against Chelsea, but because they've got the firepower, United. And then Tottenham against Crystal Palace. That's going to, for me, I don't think it'll be a 4-0, but I think probably 2-0 to Tottenham.
1-1 draw.
You think Crystal Palace will get a draw at Tottenham? If he plays with Moura and, well, especially Kane, Bale and Son. I said before in this podcast a few weeks ago that it didn't look like the Tottenham players were passing to Bale and didn't trust him. In that game against Burnley, he was integral, and the other players knew it. If they play that in the first half, that front four, I think Palace will find themselves behind at the break.
But Palace, when we come towards the end of the season, have got a history of upsetting the big clubs, and I think this will be a time when they will.
Chelsea against Everton. I mean, again, Everton, as you say, one week they look good, one week they look a bit meh, as you said. And Chelsea still haven't lost under Tuchel, but still hasn't got them firing, has he, as you said? Maybe he's shored up the defence a bit. They've had quite a few clean sheets.
Yeah, that Chelsea should win that 2-0, I think.
And then finally, West Ham against Leeds.
Well, it's a Leeds match, so just pick any number, really. Yeah. I'd go 2-1 West Ham.
Great. Well, I mean, as a Tottenham fan, I hope not, because we're way behind you and we need to catch you up a little bit. Those are our predictions. Time for the answer to your trivia question.
Many strikers have scored hat-tricks of headers, so 3 headers in one match. A few have got 4 headed goals in one match. One player has got 5 in one match, and it was Malcolm MacDonald, who did it for England against Cyprus in 1975. He scored 5 goals, all headers in an international.
That is absolutely amazing. I mean, 2-3 headers in a game is one thing. Sometimes you get left foot, right foot header, hat-trick, perfect hat-trick. But I think 5 headers in one game, no matter who the opposition, is absolutely incredible. And he wasn't the tallest man in the world. So that is brilliant, Malcolm MacDonald. That's all we've got time for. We'll be back next week. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
And that was Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.